Okay, members of the committee, it's 1 p.m. Are we ready to proceed? Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Ottawa under the Planning Act. This video conference is also live streaming on YouTube. With me are my fellow panel members, Bonnie Oak-Sharon, Heather McLean, Stan Wilder, and my name is Michael Wildman, and I will be chairing this hearing today. The procedure for this hearing will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Committee members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or opposition to each of the applications. Today, we will hear oral submissions from any interested parties. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each application was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. This declaration must be on file today before we can hear the application, and without it, we may have to adjourn the application or administer an oath if necessary. And I can confirm that I believe all of the applications today require a verbal oath. The committee may ask for a brief presentation of the application, followed by questions by members and submissions for the public. Please address your comments to the chair, starting with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. The committee limits presentations to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the discretion of the chair. And then on to the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest from any of the members of committee? Okay, seeing none. There are no minutes to be confirmed, and we will now move into adjournment requests. So the first adjournment requests are items 2 and 3 on the agenda. And this is 56 Brunel. And could we have the agent for this application please come forward?
Oh, sorry about that. Hi, my name is Merrick LeBerge. My business address is 2008 Gatineau View Crescent, and I will be acting as agent.
Okay. And on the, you're aware of the, that this is on for adjournment. Do you have any comments with respect to adjournment?
No, I'm just requesting an adjournment date of May 18th. Forestry had come back and we hadn't properly communicated our greenscaping plan. We have since provided a landscape plan, so we're just waiting for comments back from Forestry, but they have all the updated information. So if I could kindly request a May 18th adjournment date, that would be fantastic.
Okay, thank you. And the planner for the file, any comments from planning?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That would be fine with planning staff and forestry.
Okay, thank you. Members of the committee, do you have any comments or questions? Are we okay to vote on adjournment until the next meeting? All in favor? Thank you. Adjourn to the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye.
All right, we are now on to items 7 and 8. And this is 292 Fifth Avenue. And we have a request from a resident because for an adjournment because the sign was not posted for the consecutive days. We have a both a variance and a consent, and between the two of them, they require 10 and 14 days. This is a statutory requirement, so it's not something that the committee has latitude to vary. And we were speaking with committee staff about getting a new sign up, and we understand that there was a period of about 36 hours where there was no sign there. However, to meet the statutory requirements, we understand that a sign will have to go up, and it would have to be up essentially by tomorrow with the new date of a new hearing, which we would propose to be at the next hearing date. Can we hear from the applicant on this?
Sure. Thanks.
Your name, please.
Pavel Kankura.
Okay, and your address?
292 Fifth is the property, and I'm
Okay, thank you. So on the topic of adjournment until the next meeting.
Well, I mean, the situation was we had put the sign up actually 15 days in advance. There was about a less than 24-hour period where we were notified that it went missing. The neighbors informed the city informed us, and we replaced it with a new one. And so that's kind of the scenario that led to where we are. So I'm fairly new to this, so on the topic of adjournment, I defer to you guys. If it's required that it's adjourned, so be it. We're okay with that, but we're also ready to present yeah.
Yeah, so we don't really have any latitude. Committee staff have advised us that they can produce the new sign in very short order, and that if you can get it up for, I believe it's tomorrow, you will comply with all of the requirements for the next hearing. And the reason is you have to have the new hearing dates on your sign as well. So if you would contact the committee staff following the meeting to arrange for that, we could adjourn until the next meeting. Member Wilder, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Wildman. Yes, I do. Mr. Kankura, Ms. Smith, I would like to have you take under advisement meeting with the many people who are opposed to this application, have concerns with this application, as I do, a number of concerns, and take advantage of this time to meet with them, discuss ways to resolve some of their concerns, because, and as well with the community association, before you come back to us. Thank you very much. I think that's going to be very important.
Thank you, Mr. Wilder. Does planning staff have any thing that they wish to add?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair. No, we agree with the adjournment to comply with the requirements for the sign to be posted.
Thank you, Ms. Wakula.
Thank you.
Members of the committee, are we ready to vote on adjournment till the next meeting? On adjournment? Thank you. Adjourn until the next meeting. Thank you. We are going to move to item 10 on the agenda. And in this case, if I could have planning staff, please walk us through your request for adjournment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff are requesting an adjournment because this application will be subject to site plan control. There's currently no application submitted with development review staff, so we are of the opinion that it is premature.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Mr. Talat, are you available?
Mr. Chair, he does not seem to be online.
Okay, we will stand this one down till later in the agenda to see if he's available. If the coordinator could let us know when he comes online, that would be appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda for adjournment is item number 13, and this is Sterling Avenue. Bear with me one second. And the agent, if we could have the agent come forward. Ms. Sander.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I was cut out for a few seconds, but Ms. Sander isn't participating in this meeting. My name's Chris Clark. I've been the agent for Zanderplan on the application. My address is 89 Princess Street, Lanark, Ontario.
Okay, if you could provide your comments with respect to adjournment.
The community association recommended that we present to them again. And they only hold a meeting once a month. So their next meeting is May 10th. So when we adjourned at the last meeting, it was just, this meeting was before our next available chance to speak with them.
Okay, so you're not opposed to the adjournment?
No.
Okay. Planning staff, do you have any comments on this?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. We have no concerns with that.
Okay, thank you. Members of the committee, any questions or comments? We're able to vote on adjournment through to the next meeting, May 18th. And this is carried. Thank you.
Thank you,
See you
Mr.
at
Chair.
the next meeting. On to items 15 and 16. Carruthers Avenue, 17 Carruthers Avenue. And this had been previously adjourned from April 20th. The adjournment request is from planning staff for additional time for the applicant to address planning concerns. We understand that the agent for the application is opposed to that. If we could have planning, please outline your rationale for the adjournment.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we changed our report and request because our understanding was that the applicant considering redesign, but due further conversation with the applicant, they're not considering this option anymore. So we continue with opposing the application. Thank you.
So you're no longer requesting adjournment. You're just opposed to the application. So
Yes.
we will hear it today.
Yes.
Could we have the agent, please? Mr. Kalitsa, or one of the other agents?
Good afternoon, committee. It's Jim Kalitsa, 76 Chamberlain Avenue.
So I assume, Mr. Kalitsa, you're prepared to proceed with this application?
Yes, we are, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we will stand it down and it will show up on the agenda just as it is set right now. So we'll come back to you in the due course of getting through the agenda. Thank you. All right. Over to the balance of the items. Back up to the top of the agenda. We are at item 1. And 283 Elgin Street. And Miss McQuaig, I believe, is the agent.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Good afternoon, Miss McQuaig. Your name and your address for the record, please.
Christine McQuaig, and the address is 43 Eccles, Unit C.
Okay, and I will need to get the oath from you. Just bear with me one moment, Ms. McQuaig. You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I do affirm.
Thank you. Ms. McQuaig, we've been through the file in a fair amount of detail. We don't know that we need a full presentation. However, we would ask if you could address the two-part test for permission.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. If you want to open the presentation, it is included in there, but I can also summarize it as per section 45(2)(a)(I) of the Planning Act. The expansion is permitted given that it has continued until the date of the application to the committee, and it does not extend beyond the limits of the land owned and used in connection therewith. That would be on slide 14. I would also note with regards to the request today, city staff's planning report identified a correction to the wording of variance A, and we are in agreement with that correction. So just wanted to make sure that was noted today at the hearing.
Yes, and on that, I'll cover that wording in a moment. Thank you. Ms. McQuaig, do you have any opposition to tying this to the life of the building?
No, I do not.
Okay, so we can add a condition for that. So with respect to variance A, as you noted, the change in wording will be to prevent an addition to a building located within the front and corner side yard. That's first change of the lot. Whereas the heritage overlay provisions of the bylaw state that the additions are only permitted, and then we'll be striking out within the rear and side yards and adding entirely within the rear yard or in the interior yard abutting the rear yard and properties within the heritage overlay.
That is correct.
And aside from that one condition, there are no others. Do members of committee have any questions, comments, or concerns that you wish to raise? Ms. Oakeshott.
Thank you. I'm just wondering about the materials being used, the windows. I think it mentions that they are able to be opened or the roof is able to be opened. And I was wondering if there are any noise implications that we need to be aware of associated with that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can respond to that. The glazing system on Elgin Street is the only side that has operable glazing, and it's not, the client is on the call as well, Mr. Peter McCallum, and he can detail that further, but to my understanding, there's not going to be any significant noise generated from the operable glazing system. It also will be facing Elgin Street, so there is no notable impacts to the adjacent residential along McLaren Street. I'm noticing Mr. McCallum has just come on, so if he wants to speak further to that point, he can do so as well.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. As far as the glazing, it's an electric motor. Are you concerned about the noise of operating the panels?
That's right. I was thinking of the residents that are very close in the nearby.
No, it's an electric motor that just raises and lowers the panel. It would be, I'm trying to think what I could compare it to. There would be no noise implication that I can think of at all. You could sit beside it. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Any other members of committee have any questions or comments? Members of committee, are we prepared to vote on this application? On approval with A as amended and outlined and tying to the life of the building. It's carried. Thank you, Ms. McQuaig.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Take care.
Mr. Chair, we have Mr. Tino Talat for item number 10 present.
Okay. All right. We'll actually jump right back to that.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Talat, are you available?
Yes. Hi, sorry, we were having some computer issues.
Okay. Your name and address for the record, please.
Tino Talat, 760 Kerwin, Ottawa, Ontario, KOA 1T0.
Okay, we're going to have Mr. Hamilton just come back and explain what he explained to committee, and you weren't available for that. So I'd just like to have you have the opportunity to hear that and then comment after that.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, staff are requesting an adjournment because a site plan control application is applicable to this development. A site plan control application has not been filed with development review staff, so we are of the opinion that hearing this minor variance is premature.
So, Mr. Talat, do you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, basically, it's what we were looking for was a reduction in the lot area. We had all the setbacks that were required for a building that we were proposing. But I guess because it's a PUD, it'll require site plan. So I'm wondering, when we first met with the planner, they suggested to go this route because it was one variance, simply to vary the lot area for a PUD. But it sounds like if we were just to create another lot, we would avoid the site plan process. So I'm not sure if that's what we should be doing then.
I think that's an offline discussion you need to have with planning staff. At the moment, what's before committee is do we adjourn or not? I would suggest you, given the feedback from the planning staff, that the committee is going to be compelled to put a lot of weight on what the planning staff have said.
Right.
So our suggestion to you is that you do consider the adjournment and that we adjourn sine die to allow you the opportunity to work out any issues you can with planning staff.
Sure. Who do we meet with at planning?
You would contact Mr. Hamilton and
Hamilton? Sure.
He will work with you on getting the right dialogue going.
Okay, thank you.
Members of committee on adjournment sine die. And that is carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And back to the regular agenda. So we are on items, I believe we're on items 5 and 6. Just bear with me. Yep. Yeah. No, we're on item 4, are we not? Yeah. Okay, so item 4, 102 McLaren Street. Agent for the applicant, Ms. Lowe, are you available?
Hello, committee and chair. My name is Allison Lowe. I'm actually the owner of the property.
Okay.
My address is 102 McLaren Street.
Thank you. Before we begin, I'll have to administer the oath. You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time.
I do.
Thank you. Ms. Lowe, we've reviewed your application in detail. We wonder, do you have anything you wish to add beyond what you've submitted?
No, I prepared a short slide deck, but if just to show how we met the 4 tests of the Planning Act, but if you've already reviewed that, then it's up to you whether you'd like me to go through it.
If you want to go over it quickly, Ms. Lowe, please do.
Okay.
Just the 4 tests.
Okay, sure.
If the committee coordinator could put that up.
I don't think that's the right one, but I can just speak to them in case perhaps they didn't receive it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, essentially the 4 tests. The first test is the variance minor. Oh, there it is. There we go. Yeah, so just quickly, it's the proposal is the construction of a new 2-story detached coach house with a garage on the ground floor. And that would be to the rear of our existing dwelling, and as that's all shown on the plans that have been filed with the committee. So in terms of the 4 tests, next slide, please. The first test is the variance minor. And so we feel that it is minor, that the extent of the impact on the proposal on our neighboring properties and the neighborhood as a whole would be minor or non-existent. The size and height of the proposed development would not create any significant issues for the abutting property owners related to sunlight, privacy, or views. As you probably saw from the application, we have 2 apartment buildings and their associated parking lots on either side of us, so we don't feel that it would create any issues there. The density itself is similar to the established norms of the neighborhood. It would just be adding a single unit coach house. We don't feel that it would create any negative impacts for access, parking, drainage, traffic, or noise. And we do feel that it's compatible with the established built form and character of our neighborhood. The second test is it desirable for the appropriate development or use of the property? And we do feel it is. It seeks only minor variances to the zoning bylaws that are characteristic of the neighborhood. The third test lists asks specifically about the zoning bylaws, and on the slide we've listed the 5 bylaws. 4 of them relate to the section 142 of the coach house specifically. So the first one is to permit a garage on the ground floor of the coach house. The second one is to increase the height from 3.6 to 6 meters to allow for that parking underneath. The third is to allow for a reduced setback to 1 meter from the 4 that is required. The fourth is to allow for us to use the existing laneway and not to have a specific walkway to the coach house. And the fifth relates to the front. It's a different section, section 139, the bylaw relating to the width of the front walkway in our house, seeking an increase from 1.2 to 2.3. And the last test of the Planning Act relates to the, is it in line with the intent and purpose of the official plan? And again, as I mentioned on slide 1, we do feel that it's in the context of the neighborhood. It wouldn't create issues for abutting property owners related to sunlight, privacy, or views, or access, parking, drainage, or traffic. We feel it's compatible, and we do feel that it supports the growth management framework and also the citywide policy, specifically to enable some greater flexibility for, gentle increase in intensification. As I mentioned, it's just a single unit. We do intend to make it congruent with the current house, so brick, dark trim. We have, our agent has consulted with planning staff, and we've addressed all the comments that they've had. We've had several back and forth, so we feel that we have responded to comments from the city. So that's all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lowe. We do have 2 registered speakers. Is Ms. Cooper available? Is the coordinator able to let us know if she is online?
Mr. Chair, she is present. She'll just have to press unmute on her side.
Maybe while we're waiting, we'll see if Mr. Lim and Ms. Baran are available to speak.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. I'm an agent of the owner,
okay.
So I'm just here to support her.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Cooper, do you wish to speak? Give her another minute to try to connect with us before we move it down on the agenda.
Just saying you don't have any comments.
Okay, coordinator, we're going to stand this down and we will come back to it later.
I will give Ms. Cooper an email to reach out to her.
Yes, thank you. And we are now on to item 5 and 6. And this is 432 Avondale. And we believe, I guess it's Miss Daou, the agent.
Good afternoon.
Hi there, Miss Daou. For the record, full name and address, please.
Yes, Jessica Daou, and my business address is 43 Eccles Street, Unit C.
Thank you. And will you be doing the oath today?
Yes, I will.
Okay. You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I affirm.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Daou, we will be asking for a presentation because as we understand, staff will be speaking about this and will be opposed to it. So if you would please lead us through your presentation.
Absolutely. If the committee coordinators could place that on the screen, that would be fantastic. So I will start off by saying I'm the acting agent for the owners. The owners of the property, Chelsea Nesbitt and Mike Bainan, are also on the call today if there are any specific questions for them, as well as the project designer, Justin Seguin. So this is a proposal for the development of 2 3-story single detached dwellings with attached garages at the property located at 432 Avondale Avenue. Next slide, please. The site presently contains a single detached dwelling and attached front-facing garage and is currently the owner's principal residence. It's located on the south side of Avondale in the block bounded by Golden to the west and Roosevelt to the east at the intersection of Cole Avenue just to the north. Next slide, please. This neighborhood, it's the Westborough Neighborhood, and this particular area is characterized by primarily single detached and semi-detached dwellings in a variety of sizes, ages, and styles, many of which are new construction, and many of them do also feature front-facing attached garages, as shown in the imagery on the screen that were taken in a site visit this winter. Go to the next slide, please. So again, this proposal is to construct 2 new dwellings and then sever the lot in half with 1 unit on each newly created parcel. To facilitate the development, 3 variances are required, which are the same for each development. The first being a reduced lot width of 9.01 meters, whereas 10 is required. Reduced interior side yard setback of 0.6 meters, whereas 1.5 meters is required. And this is applicable to each side yard along the proposed severance line as shown in the red hatched line. And then finally, a proposed front-facing garage, whereas a front-facing garage is not permitted by the results of the streetscape character analysis. Next slide, please. So this property, again, will be severed into 2 parcels, with parts 1 and 2 being the west parcel A, and parts 3 and 4 being the east parcel B. There's a proposed shared easement right-of-way that's proposed along parts 2 and 3 in favor of each of the new lots, respectively. And this is to allow access and maintenance along the interior side yards for each new dwelling. Each resulting lot configuration will be 9.01 meters wide, requiring the minor variance, and a lot area of 313.10 meters squared, which exceeds the zoning requirements for lot area for this zone. Next slide, please. So these dwellings were designed with a reverse slope driveway, which is to respond to the grade change from the street to the south in the rear yard. The benefit of the reverse slope driveway allows for minimal grade changes with the development, and it also benefits from a reduced height, which matches the properties to the west. It also conceals the garage even more from the street and allows for fewer steps from the street to the principal entrance, improving the streetscape relationship. There's a proposed bay window projection and front landing, which are both drawn towards the street with the garage set back and lowered, with ample front yard soft landscaping, as well as the retention of a city-owned maple tree, distinctive tree, which is in the center of the soft landscape area. Next slide, please. These just show the rear yard and rear renderings. The rear yard setback area and soft landscaping all comply fully with zoning and in particular the Westborough development overlay provisions. There are no near rear neighbors for this property. It actually abuts the Dovercart Recreation Center to the rear, so there's no impact with the proposed development to abutting properties to the rear. And again, this design does respond to the site grade change with a walkout at the lower level and then a permitted balcony projection above. And there's proposed privacy walls and fencing in the rear for added visual privacy and amenity space privacy. Next slide, please. And just showing the 2D elevations of the property for added context. The next slide. So I'm just going to specifically go through the 4 tests. First being is the variance minor. So in terms of the lot width, this neighborhood contains a mix of singles and semis with varying lot fabrics, which is shown in the below mapping from GeoOttawa. The red properties all are highlighting properties with narrower lot fabrics, as well as reduced interior side yard setbacks, just from a desktop review of the neighborhood. This is an existing large lot, which would actually support semi-detached 3 townhouses, stacked development, or a 6-unit apartment development as of right with the existing lot width and lot area. However, the proposed singles are much more appropriate and compatible form of gentle intensification that does fit and work well within this, this neighborhood and context, and offers gentle intensification and a massing and scale that's quite appropriate. In addition to that, the lot area for the singles exceeds zoning requirements with the depth of the lot, and there's no rear neighbors, so no impact for that. The building also meets all other footprints and setback related provisions, save for the interior side yard setback. So the provided 1.5 meter interior side yard setback along the neighboring property lines, so therefore there will be no impact to those adjacent properties, and there will also be adequate access to the rear yards and building separation. The proposed easements and right-of-ways for access and maintenance between the new dwellings will allow for maintenance and access purposes and sufficient space to do so, resulting in a 1.2 meter shared space along that, that newly created severance line. Again, all other zoning provisions for setbacks and footprint are being met. And the neighborhood already does contain many examples of properties with setbacks at 0.6 meters, ranging up to 1 meter. So this proposed reduction is consistent with the built form in the community. Ultimately, the interior side yard reduction really just allows for a livable floor plate that works for the property. It also allows for a design element for cutouts in the main floor plan that allow for, it's an interesting design feature. Unfortunately, I don't have the floor plans to show, but it's a cutout along the existing neighbors to the east and west, which kind of offsets the newly created development and provides some extra buffering and visual separation between the neighbors, which is a benefit for the property owners as well as those existing neighbors. In the lower imagery, you'll see the massing study that was completed, which shows an example of semi-detached development that would require no interior side yard setback reduction with just a shared common party wall. And from our perspective, this is a significantly larger and more impactful massing effect that is created with the permitted semi-detached, which would also be permitted in terms of lot width. Then the proposed 2 singles, which offers just generally improved massing. It offers a visual break from the streetscape as well as light and air filtration between the 2 properties. So from this yes, sorry.
If you don't mind, you showed the semi-detached. Do you have any Any streetscape imagery of the 6-unit apartment?
No, we did not get into the typology for massing for the 6-unit apartment. Just for this purpose, it's not the type of housing format that the owners were hoping to achieve here, so we felt it would be redundant. But it would be a similar type structure, potentially with a slightly increased height. But because of the Westborough overlay provisions, the required setbacks along the interior side yard that are shown with the permitted semi-detached would be quite similar to the low-rise apartment, since there's a consistent requirement for setbacks that's amongst all development formats across the Westborough development overlay, including the low-rise apartments.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I'll just go to the next slide. So in terms of the front-facing attached garage variance, through the results of the streetscape character analysis, there were confirmed 7 cases of attached front-facing garages and 10 instances of rear lanes with side yard parking. Just a couple considerations for the way that the streetscape character analysis must be completed. It does not consider double garages, which give the appearance of having more garages on this streetscape, and there are 2 of those on the immediate block of Avondale. It also does not allocate credit for the existing site's garage, which currently has an attached front-facing garage. And it also does not factor in corner lots within the area that do have front-facing garages, but actually face the corner side yard intersecting street as opposed to Avondale. So with those factored in, the results of the streetscape character analysis would be equal front-facing garage versus no. So just another sort of massing example that was completed to demonstrate what we're proposing. This cantilever design is shown with a semi-detached dwelling. So this would be a permitted development as of right. The cantilever design would actually be the only instance of this in the neighborhood. So it would be the anomaly, whereas the front-facing garages is much more prominent in the community and is still consistent with the neighborhood fabric and the neighborhood compatibility. Also, the cantilever does not actually allow any storage for bicycles, waste storage, and ultimately ends up creating more emphasis on the parking because it will never be concealed versus having the front-facing garages where the parking is concealed, and it offers a much more practical solution to waste storage, maintenance, all of the necessary things for a family home. So with that, we do feel that this variance in particular is minor in this context. So next slide, please. The existing general urban area designation of the official plan permits a variety of residential development and infill intensification, encourages compatible design, and this development does provide this compatibility through gentle intensification that is similar in design and compatible in design to the neighborhood context and complies with all but 3 zoning provisions. In terms of the new official plan, the neighborhood designation supports intensification and density increases through ground-oriented residential development and family-sized units, as well as preservation of soft landscaping and mature trees. And this proposed development does offer this form of permitted intensification, one of which will be the owner's family home as well, while retaining soft landscaping and tree canopy in the front and rear yards. Next slide, please. So just to quickly go through how the variances meet the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, and in particular for variance A and B, the Westborough development overlay provisions. So the intent is of the lot width zoning standard is to ensure that there's adequate building separation, open space, and consistent lot fabric for all new development forms. And that ranges from single detached dwellings all the way up to low-rise apartment dwellings, which have an equal requirement. These sites can adequately support 2 single detached dwellings while managing development impact on site through generous soft landscaping and compliant height and setbacks. The lot area is also compliant with zoning, and the lot widths are consistent with other fabric in the neighborhood. The intent of the interior side yard setback provision is to ensure that both multi-unit buildings, single detached buildings have consistent yard setbacks to provide separation and access to the rear yards, and that's for waste management, maintenance, equipment, and so forth. Again, the existing east and west lot lines do comply with the 1.5 meter requirement and provide appropriate access and building separation. And the 1.2 meter combined shared setback in between the two new developments will feature reciprocal easements for access and maintenance. And both of the 0.6 meter setbacks are not less than other zoning minimums in comparable R4 standards. Again, it allows for building separation, softened massing, and a visual break between dwellings rather than provision of one large permitted semi-detached dwelling with a common party wall. And there are many examples of other dwellings with 0.6 meter interior side yard setbacks. And finally, the the provision for front-facing attached garages. The intent is to ensure parking and vehicles don't dominate the streetscapes, and that prominence is on the front facade, as well as preservation and retention of trees and soft landscaping that are prioritized in the front yard. So this development, again, it is able to protect a large mature street tree, which is a maple, a city-owned maple in the front. It also provides aggregated soft landscaping with reduced driveway widths at 2.75 meters, whereas 3 meters would be permitted. And it's only introduction of one new garage on the property and added to the streetscape. And this proposal, again, is more consistent with the streetscape character that's existing than the permitted cantilever design, which places more focus on parking and would be actually less consistent with the neighborhood and generally an anomaly in the area. Next slide, please. So these variances facilitate the appropriate and gentle intensification of this site with ground-oriented, family-sized development and are of appropriate lot size, shape, and scale for the community. And again, this neighborhood already features many examples of newer construction, and many of those do have attached front-facing garages. Finally, the owners have done quite a bit of community consultation with their neighbors, and they've gone door to door to discuss the proposal. They have received 9 letters of support for the proposal as submitted. We've also consulted with the Westborough Community Association and have received a letter of support that has been submitted to committee on behalf of this project as well. So given these factors, we believe these requested variances meet the 4 tests under Section 45 of the Planning Act, as well as the severance criteria under Section 5124, and represent good land use planning. And I am very happy to answer any questions and do have our other team members here if needed as well.
Thank you, Ms. Daou. That was a comprehensive presentation. Members of the committee, we'll ask Ms. Daou some questions now before we move on to staff and anyone else who wishes to speak. Ms. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's just not clear to me why you can't meet the side yard setbacks. So just a couple of questions. What is the square footage of the dwellings? And what's the distance between the eaves? It looked very narrow there on the rendering.
Sure. So I apologize. I'm just going to pull up the floor plans through you, Mr. Chair. So an analysis was completed by the designer and the property owner. So they've gone through various iterations of design opportunities and potential alternatives to meet the requirements under the zoning bylaw. Of course, one of those was to create a floor plate that worked with the 1.5 meter required side yard setback on both sides. And unfortunately, just with the narrowness that would be resulting from that development footprint, the floor plate just simply didn't work. As it currently stands, it's already quite a narrow footprint. And so that ultimately responds to the need for, a footprint and floor plate that does, function for a livable area. There's also 2 features that they've included, and I sort of touched on in terms of the floor plan. So raised garden beds have been added as cutouts that enter closer into the interior of each of the dwellings. And I'm speaking to those as though from the most easterly and most westerly side yards adjacent to the existing neighbors. And those have some raised garden beds and windows. And the purpose of those is closer to the front yard. Those draw in the building footprint a little bit more just to offer some additional privacy screening and buffering. And they're just a nice sort of design touch that kind of gives some additional separation between those neighboring property lines. In terms of your questions regarding the eaves projection and the total floor area, I would ask that Justin Segne, the project designer, perhaps respond to those, just because I don't have, unfortunately, those calculations right in front of me, and he'll be much quicker to respond to those.
Mr. Sagan.
So while we're waiting for Mr. Sagan to connect, am I hearing you saying that the lots are too narrow and you're asking for a variance for narrow lots? That's why you can't supply the required side yards?
Well, from my perspective, through you, Mr. Chair, these lots are only 0.9 meters less wide than what would be permitted under the zoning bylaw. And with the Westborough development overlay provisions, unfortunately, for single detached dwellings, they're held to the same standards as low-rise apartment buildings, stacked dwellings, and so forth. If this were a semi-detached dwelling, which would offer the same format of density increase on the property, this would be permitted to have I believe it's a 6 meter wide lot. So with the same amount of density, it's a 6 meter wide lot permitted with a semi-detached versus a 10 meter wide lot provided with a single detached dwelling. I'm getting a signal from Justin that he can't make his volume work. So, so, you know, in terms of the difference between those two densities, this is the same density. It just unfortunately is held to quite a significant higher standard. And so we've responded to all of the design considerations in terms of rear yard setback, which has some additional requirements to not extend further than 24 meters from the front lot line. All of the yard area requirements are being met. So it's really just this single interior side yard setback that that has created a development challenge just for that floor plate to be workable.
But you did point out that the lot area is exceeded. So I am still struggling with why you need the variances for the side yards, but I'll leave it there and I'll just hope that we can get some information on the size of these houses, the square footage of these houses, and the projections, but I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I understand Mr. Sagan is having some technical difficulties, so perhaps he can try logging in again. And in the meantime, I'll pass it over to Member Wilder to ask his question.
Thank you. I guess I have the same concerns as Ms. McLean. I understand the purchase of properties in Westborough for redevelopment are very expensive. I happen to know from friends who have been looking themselves, and you know, I'm wondering here, it came down to a matter, I guess, of economics. One can get a better price, obviously, selling two singles as opposed to your client putting up a semi-detached. I mean, I know that's a fact. I mean, I know that other cases in Westborough, two singles, and each single is going to sell more. It's just a matter of the nature of the type of development. Two singles versus having, you know, the privacy of two singles versus a semi. But a semi could work on the site, could it not? It's a matter, is it not, of your clients, a matter of economics? Am I correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's more so a matter of their preference in terms of what type of dwelling they want to live in. So this is going to be, one of these properties will be their family home. They currently live on the property, and so they've been living in the neighborhood to get a sense of the neighborhood and have decided that this is where they want to set up their roots. So ultimately, they've decided that a single detached dwelling fits their needs better. It also obviously creates for less sort of shared reliance on each of the property owners with just one sort of common element easement between the two properties for maintenance, as opposed to having all of the sort of shared requirements that are associated with having the semi-detached dwelling. So ultimately, it just came down to this being their preference for their future family home, ultimately. Through you, Mr. Chair, I do have the size of the building footprint. I apologize, it was on the site plan, but just in small text. So to respond to your question, Member McLean, the footprint is 130 square meters total, including the garage.
Ms. McLean, do you require anything else?
And is that over two stories or 3 stories? What? That's the main floor footprint? Times 2 or times?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I apologize again. It's written as footprint on the site plan. I would need Mr. Seguin to be able to respond to whether that's total or how many stories that area is split over. I do hope that he's able to get onto the call soon so he can respond to that. I apologize.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oak. Cheryl?
Thank you. I'd like to get the answer to Ms. McLean's question as well. And I was wondering if Mr. Sagan cannot reconnect, maybe he could type the figure into the chat, just so we have that dimension between the eaves.
Yeah, let's do that as a second option. I'd like to see him try to call in by telephone with the coordinates that the coordinators provided.
Okay, he's responded to me through you, Mr. Chair. Sorry. I just checked my phone and I do have a message from Mr. Seguin just to touch on that. So the eaves are 1 foot from the property line and the interior property lines. They meet the permitted projection requirements under the zoning, and the houses are 2,700 square feet total, each separately.
Thank you. Members of the committee, any follow-up questions based on that? Okay, we have Ms. Mitchell from the Westborough Community Association. If Ms. Mitchell, your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Heather Mitchell with the Westborough Community Association. I live at 485 Richmond Road.
Thank you. Please proceed.
The Westborough Community Association supports this design for a lot of reasons. One is we feel it's compatible with the area. We're not troubled by the forward-facing garages because as Ms. Dow has pointed out, it is actually quite mixed, and you're swapping one garage, you're only adding one extra garage in this configuration. It would be the same if you were doing a semi-detached, you would still only be adding one extra. When walking around the surrounding neighborhood, we see a lot of multi-dwellings being built on what was previously a single larger lot. The reduced side yard setbacks between these two buildings seems to be, at least in our view, common with properties types of this kind. We find the proposed homes that have been designed attractive. They seem to fit in well with the neighborhood. And most important to us, the consultation and outreach by the owner and Ms. Dayu and her team has been, in our view, outstanding. They are real community partners on this, and I feel that's worth a great deal in Westborough, where there's a lot of things going up where there's been not a great deal of consideration given to neighbors. So I just want to put that before the committee. We do think this project is quite compatible with our neighborhood, and we're very pleased, and we would love to see it go up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell, and thank you for making that comment about the consultation. As Member Wilder said earlier, he and the rest of the committee feel strongly that that's an important part of the process. Could I have planning staff, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
If you would please respond and provide the planning position on this file.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, we are concerned about the cumulative impact of the variances, additional one to the lot widths, and we're in a position where the development is proposed on the undersized lot. It has to comply with Streetscape, and additionally, the side yard setback seems to accommodate the design for the garage, which is not permitted as per Streetscape, and it also the variance from the Westborough infill study bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the committee, any questions for Ms. Wakula? Members of the committee, do you wish to reserve or do you wish to vote now?
I'd like to reserve, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. We will reserve on this and you'll have our decision within 10 days. Thank you, Ms. Dawu, and the rest of your team. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I believe we are on to item 9. Actually, is Ms. Daou still there? No, okay. We're on to item 9. And this is 681 Tweedsmuir. And agent for the applicant, Justina Garbos, or Samantha Gachny.
Good evening, members of the committee and chair. My name is Samantha Gachny. I'm joined today by my colleague, Justina Garbos, but I will be presenting today on this application should committee wish to see the slides I've prepared.
Okay, and your address for the record, please?
Yes, it's 2611 Queensview Drive, Suite 300.
Thank you. And will you be taking the oath today?
I will.
Okay, do you solemnly swear to affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I do.
Okay, thank you. The committee has reviewed the documentation fairly thoroughly on this particular file. We're not sure that we need a full presentation, but we'd like to offer you the opportunity if you feel that you have anything to add on this file.
No, only if committee feels the need to go through the test. I'm happy to do that, but otherwise, I'm okay.
Okay, members of the committee, do you have any questions for the agent? No. Okay, Ms. Mitchell.
Hi, me again.
Welcome back.
How many days, Mr. Chair, is a sign required to be on the site?
For a minor variance, it is 10 days, and for a consent, it is 14.
Okay. According to a nearby neighbor, the sign went up on April 26th. Does that satisfy your requirement? Or is the neighbor confused?
Well, I can't speak for what the neighbor's level of confusion, Ms. Mitchell, but I do have to accept that unless there's somebody here to speak to the contrary, that the sworn oath is that. And
Okay.
I will put it back to Ms. Gachny again. You're comfortable with the oath you swore, correct?
I am, and we do have photos that were taken on the day that it was posted that are dated on, I believe it's April 19th was the, it's when the photos
Okay.
are. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mitchell, do you have any?
Yes, I do. I want to know if the owners or the agent have contacted anybody on the abutting properties at the back, which belongs to the Westborough Co-op. I want to know if there's been outreach to those neighbors and if you've received any comments from those neighbors. The proposed coach house is quite a bit taller than what is required or what is the standard. And I just want to make sure that those neighbors have been contacted. It would have an effect on with that height. I can't say for certain because I'm only a CA, but it may have an impact on their privacy and on their backyards. I can't say because I have heard nothing from them and I don't know if they've been contacted. Also, neighbors are just a couple of neighbors. I've heard from one neighbor who simply doesn't feel that they're not against the project per se. They just feel they haven't been properly consulted. That's all. That's the only point I really would like to make is there seems to be a lack of consultation, but I don't hear everyone. Can you tell me how many people you've heard from in the neighborhood? And
Ms. Gachny, can you respond to any contact that you may have had?
Absolutely. So for you, Mr. Chair, so the neighbors to the rear were circularly understood by the city through the circulation notice. We did not receive any comments for the city from them regarding this application. The next door neighbor adjacent to the property did reach out to the city to provide comments regarding the coach house, the one that the coach house is proposed next to along the northern property line. And in terms of addressing their comments, we are satisfied that the application, based on the 4 tests that we provided, does provide adequate separation and mitigates privacy impact, has minimal privacy impacts, largely due to the fact that there's no windows proposed and that the minimum interior side yard setback has been met for it.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that the consultation had been conducted, especially with the co-op.
Scotchy, were you referring to the concern with respect to the height of the structure? Did you speak to that individual?
I did not speak directly. Yeah, Mr. Chair, I did not speak directly to that neighbor. They had provided comments to the city through it, and I believe they had spoken to the owners of the property who had gone out and they had spoken to their neighbor in person regarding their proposed application in advance of this hearing.
Thank you. Members of the committee, do you have any questions for Ms. Gachny? No. Mr. Hamilton, any comments or concerns based on what you've heard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are no concerns from staff.
Thank you. Members of the committee, are we prepared to vote?
Can we reserve on this one, Mr. Chair?
Certainly. Okay, Ms. Gachny, we will reserve on this and you will receive a decision within 10 days.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are now on to 11 and 12.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Jessica is still present if you did have a question for her.
Sorry, who is?
Miss Jessica Daou for items number.
Oh, she is, eh? Yeah, if she could just pop on for one moment, please, back to her file just real quick.
Hello again.
Hi, Ms. Daou. I'm sorry, I let you run away just a little too quickly. I
No
just
problem.
want to, if you don't mind, I'd like to just go through your conditions with you.
Sure.
Apologize for not doing that. I'm not usually the guy in this chair. Bear with me, I'm just scrolling away here. Okay, so cash in lieu, tree protection around the critical root zone of the protected tree and sanitary and storm services must be abandoned and capped outside the critical root zone. Tree planting plan, existing dwelling removed and capped services, independent services, grading and drainage plan, development agreement for the asphalt overlay, that's for the servicing that occurs, an agreement with a warning on title with the property may be susceptible to flooding due to reverse slope driveway, and a JUMA.
Yes, we're aware of all and comfortable with all the conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Doe.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, back to 11 and 12. So, Mr. Kershaw.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. How are you?
You're good, thank you. Mr. Kershaw, your full name and address for the record, please.
Paul Kershaw. Business address is 739 Ridgewood Avenue in Ottawa.
Thank you. So let me scroll back there. I had to jump backwards for a second. Okay. So this had been previously adjourned. This is a matter for basically lot size. If you can provide a brief presentation, not too long, and also if you wouldn't mind during the course of that, answering how many units will there be? Are there any secondary units proposed?
No problem. I am not a planner, just so so you know. So would you like me to read the I know that you've already read the documents that we sent in previous, but the 4 tests, would you like me to go through
Yes,
that?
please do. Please
Okay.
do. And please try to respond to that final question that I.
No problem. Absolutely.
Thank you.
So if you could put up the slide, the first slide of the site plan there. Oh, do we need to do the oaths of?
Yes, we do. Thank you very much. I thought I
You're
was
welcome.
going to get it all right. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I affirm.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, panel members. On behalf of our client, we're submitting a minor variance and a consent to sever for the lot at 11 Sherbrooke, which is between just south of Wellington Avenue in Westborough. The current lot is a large lot that we're proposing to sever into 3 equal lots, all to be single-family homes. So that should answer your question from before. There is no secondary dwelling unit, nor it will be converted to a 3-unit development in the future. They're all the site plan says that. So at this time, sorry, just bear with me. So the existing building is on this property is a 2.5-story duplex with a detached garage. And the new will be all single-family homes being created will trigger 2 minor variances per lot, the same minor variances for each lot, except for with a slight variance, a slight difference between the 3 of them in lot area and lot width. Lot A will require a minor variance of 7.1 meters, which requires 7.5. Lot 2 will be 6.7, and lot 3 will be 6.71 again. And all the lot widths will require a minor variance for lot area of 178, which is proposed of 225, which the bylaw requires 225. The proposed building requirements, such as building height, location, parking spaces, yard setbacks for detached dwelling in the RB4U zone are all being met. Okay. The 4 tests for minor variance laid out by the Planning Act. The official plan designated in the urban area land use is permitted to encourage this type of development being proposed through the application. The recognized development is relating to the existing community character shall enhance. The area and the streets around Sherbrooke and Wellington are subject to recent redevelopment projects consisting of single-family homes and a general urban designation permits for the new single-family building is proposed. The proposed development respects the general established pattern of infill projects on oversized lots within the area. The proposed infill is keeping with the nearby infills such as 40 Sherbrooke, which has a lot of 220 meters squared, and 4244 Sherbrooke, which has a lot width of 9.5 meters, but a lot area of 185. In addition, 1125 Gladstone and 25 St. Francis have both lot areas and lot area and width under the required. So as you can see by figure 2 and 3, if you can go forward. One more. Oh, 2 more. So these are the lot areas that would require minor variances would require minor variances at some point or have had minor variances to allow development within it. Okay. And the next test is the scale and individual properties issue noise spillover, light, and shadowing, etc. The additional proposed single-family home will newly create lots compared to the existing situation and not create issues relative to noise, spillover, or parking. The new addition has been designed with an exterior balconies and privacy screen on the north side to limit the noise impact to the adjacent lot and the neighboring properties have no light spillage as there are no windows upon the side side lots, side elevations. There's a 1.2 meter setback in addition to that, that has a small windows, but we require the 1.2 meters. Okay, the new official plan. See, the proposed meets the policy guidelines of 3 in the new official plan. The proposed is a gentle form of identification of the property and represents slightly increased in density and transition from a larger property lots into the south versus more intensified development with along Wellington Street and the north of the property. The interurban transit area of the new official plan ranges in size. Ranges lot size for including smaller lots, a minimum 2 functional stories, and attached to minimal side yards, and a formal landscaping and limited parking is integral to the building. It is our opinion that minor variance proposed as in general intent, the purpose is the official plan and is desired in the appropriate development of land and represents the sensitive new home design with subject to the land, subject to the property and the house that is located, not create any negative impacts upon the community. Anything else? I can take questions of anybody.
Yeah, before we move to questions,
Sure.
And we will be asking planning staff and Ms. Young to provide some feedback as well, but the comments from the planning department are no concerns with requested severance, provided that the development be constructed in compliance with all other provisions. There are concerns with proposed location of the single detached dwellings on the existing lot, potential impacts to city-owned trees, recommends the applicant consider alternatives to site design, including the removal of the impacting driveway or the previous considering of 2 single detached dwellings on the site. So how do you respond to that feedback?
So we our Dendon, which is our arborist, has obviously met the city requirements for protection of that tree. We have also in communication with the community association, have also, although it's not been revised on the site plan, to that all of the asphalt be removed and to be permeable pavers throughout, to allow for less impact upon that tree when the driveway gets done. Also, the contractor is also, in our conversations, so whether the buildings are being stagger built or, phase built or built all at one time, Unit 1 will be built from Unit 1's access. Unit 2 will be built from Unit 3's access, right? And Unit 3 will be built from 3 so that we minimize the impact upon that tree, so that any construction, bringing of materials in, et cetera, would be from Unit 3's or Lot 3's location rather than Unit 2's location, so that we can increase the area around the tree to protect it more. So,
thank you. Before I move to staff committee, any questions or concerns that you wish to raise before we move to questions for staff? No. Okay. Ms. Young, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like your feedback on what you heard today and where you stand as far as tree protection is concerned.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Although the tree information report does say that the tree can be retained, it notes that it is, with the intensification proposed, it will be very difficult to retain it. And my main concern, I really don't have concerns at all about the buildings. It is just the driveway. It is proposed to be less than 1 meter away from the existing city tree, which already has very limited rooting space. We're just due to where it is in the boulevard. So I do have considerable concerns with reducing that rooting space even more. And there's no detail in the tree information report about permeable design of the driveway or any kind of mitigation that was spoken to today. So, I mean, if that could be included, then that may be considered. But from what I've received so far, there's no detail. And really, there still would be a lot of root impacts even with a permeable design, as well as above ground impacts. I feel like a driveway less than a meter from an existing tree will ultimately have sightline issues no matter what, and we'll end up in a situation where there are ongoing complaints about those above ground impacts.
Okay, so when I hear considerable concern, that raises some flags for me. Any questions from members of the committee for Ms. Young? Okay, thank you, Ms. Young. And just Mr. Hamilton, do you have anything else to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff comments, second Ms. Young's comments as well. We have no concerns with the requested severance independent of tree issues. The minimum lot widths and lot areas are required to ensure that new development has adequate space to accommodate things on site like trees and driveways in the adequate distancing. So we do have concerns about the tree as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I comment on the tree as well?
Sure.
The contractor who will be living in the unit 1 throughout, that's going to be his home as well. Also indicated that if the city would prefer to relocate that said tree, relocate the tree, he would do that. That's not a problem. Also, the Hindenburg Community Association has no objections to this proposal, and we've also agreed to plant trees in the back of the units for each one of these units. So I don't know how or we can plant a brand new same size caliper tree in a new location within the city property at our expense. That's not an issue for us.
Thank you. Ms. Young, if you could come back for a minute. When I look at the proposed conditions 2 and 3, and in particular condition 3, the development agreement with securities for trees 1 and 2, will you be imposing sort of any other construction related conditions in that development agreement? Or is it simply just to say that if the trees don't survive, your securities will be used to replace them with something similar?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, that condition is intended mostly to take securities so that if construction is done and damage is done to the tree, then those securities would be retained. And otherwise, they just help to ensure that the trees are adequately protected, such as the applicant noted, like that it's planned around tree protection. So I would want an updated tree information report. That is something that usually does provide more mitigation details and more information about how the trees are protected. So that would be something that would probably be included in that development agreement.
Or as a condition today, I mean, we could amend condition 2 to say that that the tree information report has to be updated to the city's satisfaction.
And we're okay with that as well. The owner also decided that if the city wanted more guarantees, is that he could increase that 2 years to be 3 years if that helps out. You know what I mean? I don't know what we want the tree. So yeah.
All right. So Ms. Young, if we were to put a condition, amend condition 2 that says that it needs to be updated to the city's satisfaction, would that give you more comfort?
It would, yes.
Okay.
I would like it to address the above ground concerns as well, because I mean, it's great to talk about how to construct the driveway and everything, but I'm just not clear how cars will actually park in that spot and be able to see to back out with a tree in that location. So I think that the tree information report would need to address all of that.
Okay. Mr. Kershaw, you are in agreement with a condition that's amended in that manner?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Wilder.
Yeah, thank you. So I looked at the comments from Hindenburg Community Association. Of course, they don't oppose, but they do, in fact, encourage. In fact, I would go beyond encourage. I would require that no asphalt here, that we're using basically permeable pavers. I don't know if
Absolutely.
we can get revised. Mr. Hamilton was mentioning that it doesn't necessarily show now in the plans that there's permeable pavers and the like. I don't know how we can do this, Mr. Chair, in terms of getting a revised plan to ensure that it shows permeable pavers. That's going to be critical to the overall protection of the tree, and considering the density on the site with 3 singles, I think that well, I'm concerned about landscaping as well, to be honest with you. Inner city location, I think it was unfortunate there can't be more landscaping than there is. But in any case, in terms of the permeable pavers, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure what we can do about that. Revised plans and build as per plans.
My sense, Mr. Wilder, is that if we amend condition 2, the way we said that the information report needs to be to the city satisfaction, I think that the leverage is there by way of number 2 and also by way of number 3 to make sure that that is protected. So I think that amending that condition number 2 would probably achieve that. Any other questions or comments from committee? Okay, Mr. Kershaw, just quickly, the conditions. Number 1 is cash in lieu. Ms. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow on Member Wilder's comments about the Hintonburg Community Association, they also, if the agent could comment on the any agreement to put on a roof over the front porch.
Yes, the design will incorporate the requested permeable pavers, the trees in the rear yard, and the small canopy on the front elevation over top of the door. Absolutely. We took all their comments and we'll be incorporating them. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. So on the proposed conditions, cash in lieu, condition 2 would be amended that it would be updated to the satisfaction of the city. Condition 3 is the development agreement for the securities for trees 1 and 2. Existing dwelling to be removed and services capped. Independent services, accessory structure to be demolished or relocated. Grading and drainage plan and agreement regarding the active railway line, a JUMA, and a noise attenuation study. You understand those conditions, Mr. Kershaw?
Indeed. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to suggest that we reserve on this if committee members don't have any further comments. Mr. Hamilton, you have something to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My apologies. There's an error in the numbering of the conditions. Conditions 9, 10, and 11 are intended to be one JUMA condition.
9, 10, and 11. I have 9 and 10 on the copy I'm looking at. So we've got JUMA, and then you got noise attenuation study as number 10. And I don't have an 11. Oh, wait a minute.
11 is part of 10.
Oh, I see.
On my copy, I do have an extra one. If you would like, I can provide the proper full wording for just the one JUMA condition, if it helps.
So you're saying that we're left with one condition related to the JUMA and the other 2 are rolled into that?
No, there is a number 11 where there should not be. It breaks apart one condition into 2. It's just an error in 11 being included where it shouldn't be.
Okay, so number 9 is still JUMA?
Yes.
What is number 10?
The second paragraph to the JUMA condition.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It also says joint use and agreement as well.
Okay. And is there an 11?
There should not be. No.
Okay. Ms. McLean, you're raising your hand.
Yes, thank you. I just wondered what the need was for a joint use if we've got 3 detached dwellings. And the second part is a question to the agent on the number of units, whether there's any secondary dwelling units in the proposal.
I'll answer the second part. So there is no secondary dwelling units, nor will the units be converted or at some point to be three like a duplex or a triplex, as one of the owners concerned. They are single family dwellings. They're too narrow to be any secondary dwelling unit. There's no room for a second entry. So yeah, they're all single family homes with no secondary dwellings.
That's sufficient, Ms. McLean?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and I don't believe we have any speakers on this, so we will reserve on this one, Mr. Kershaw, and you will receive our decision within 10 days. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.
Mr. Chair, just for the benefit of staff, I'm wondering if we can revisit briefly the conditions question and the numbering. Just to clarify whether there is a noise attenuation study requirement that does appear in the planning report that staff received.
Mr. Hamilton, can you please come back for a second?
It says or.
Which condition were you referring to as the noise attenuation study?
Mr. Chair, through you, it is identified as condition 11. There was a 9 and 10 that staff recognized as a typographical error, that they should have been consolidated. But there was a further condition beyond that, identified as 11 in the report we received for a noise attenuation study with the option of a notice on title.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. You are correct. 11, as it is written in the report, is the noise attenuation study. It is 10 that is actually part of condition 9. So there are actually 10 conditions in total, but the 11 that is shown is a separate one. If you would like, I can provide you with a full, properly numbered list following the hearing as well.
But just to confirm that, Mr. Chair, I believe the summary that the members have before them is correct. Where it consolidated those conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and please do, if you have something to forward to us, please do, Mr. Hamilton, at your earliest convenience. Thank you. All right. And where are we now? We are on 15 and 16, I believe. Carruthers.
Or 14, Mr. Chair?
Oh, my apologies. Yes, 14, Miss Hill, Kenora Street.
Hello.
Hi, Miss Hill, your name and address for the record, please.
Rosalind Hill, 414 Churchill Avenue North.
Thank you. And will you be doing the oath?
Yes.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
Yes, I do so swear.
Thank you. There's no real change here, Ms. Hill, I don't believe. Is there anything that you would like to add to anything that's already been submitted?
No, I can go through the 4 tests if that's helpful. My presentation is very, very simple and quick if it's any use to you.
Sure, go ahead, Ms. Hill.
Yeah, okay. Right, so this is the proposed building and 3D model from the front. What's at question here is the garage on the right, whether it should be built with the house or not. If it's not built with the house, there would simply be an empty space there with a car sitting in it. So it's just a question of whether that garage piece is included or not. Next slide, please. The permission to have the garage is based on the streetscape character analysis. This is the image from our analysis, but essentially it comes out 9 properties have an attached garage, 12 do not. But certainly out of that whole cluster of houses, 9 is quite a lot. It's not as though you walk down the street and you think, oh no, a garage would be out of place here. Next slide, please. The intent of that streetscape character aspect of the bylaw is to make sure that streets that are right now kind of pedestrian oriented with emphasis on front facades don't become dominated by garage doors. And we don't feel that we are contributing to a dominated with garage doors kind of a character. So this is a site plan. You can see the garage is set well back from the front face of the house. It's a couple meters back from the front face. It's 4 meters back from the front of the porch, which is a significant design feature. Next slide, please. So you can just click through this and the next 2. They're images of the street. This house doesn't have a garage. This one has a front-facing garage, but it's not attached. And this is our next door neighbor with attached garages. And then the next slide. We picked off a couple images on an angle so you could see how how much of a visual impact this garage is on the street. So here it is from this view, and from the other view, you don't even see it at all because it's recessed and the porch is very dominant. And so I think the next slide's my last, yeah. So minor, we really think it's really very insignificant whether that garage is attached on or not. It's appropriate in the neighborhood because it's actually great to hide your stuff in a garage. Without the garage, you get a car parked there. You also get some tricycles, maybe a hockey net. You get that accumulation of stuff that would otherwise be neatly tucked away in a garage. In keeping with the purpose of the bylaw, absolutely, because ultimately the purpose was to not have a street transition into a street of garage doors. And obviously this is very much focused on the pedestrian entrance and the porch. In keeping with the purpose of the official plan, we've worked hard to design a house that picks up on some of the character and material elements of its neighbors and to improve the quality of the street experience. So all of that is key official plan stuff for the old but still in law official plan. For the new official plan, one of the key elements that we're respecting here is we're not creating another curb cut. We're just keeping the one curb cut that we had before, so that we have a garage door. We haven't added garage doors, we haven't added curb cuts. And that's the curb cut issue that seems to be paramount in our new official plan when it comes to neighborhoods and access to on-site parking on neighborhood streets. If there's anything else you'd like me to speak to, then please ask.
Members of the committee, any questions for Ms. Hill? If we could have Mr. Hamilton, your comments, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff have concerns with the proposed variance as we are of the opinion that it deviates from the intent of the streetscape character analysis provisions. The streetscape character analysis is an objective count of building elements on the site, and they are intended to encourage development to maintain character with the existing homes on the street. We believe that the variance deviates from the intent of the official plan and the zoning bylaw in this respect.
Thank you. And I see, Ms. Hill, you have a number of signed letters of support from residents on Kenora.
That's right. And those are residents that are within that streetscape character catchment area. And they're very supportive. They think it's going to look nice.
Thank you. Members of the committee, are we able to dispose of this now and vote? Okay. There are no conditions, Ms. Hill, on approval. Ms. Hill, it's approved. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Now we're on to 15 and 16. And that is 117 Carruthers. And Mr. Kalitsa, please. For committee staff, is Mr. Kalitsa still online?
I am here.
Oh, hello, Mr. Kalitsa. Your full name and address for the record, please.
Jim Kalitsa. My business address is 76 Chamberlain. And joining me today will be Anthony Bruni as well. He's at the same business address.
Okay, thank you. And will you be taking the oath, Mr. Kalitsa?
I will.
Okay. You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I do.
Thank you. Can I have planning staff just introduce this from your perspective, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you, Mr. Chair. Staff's primary concern is the varying from the streetscape character analysis, requirement for principal entrances to face the street, which encourages continuity with neighboring dwellings on the same Carruthers Avenue and supports an active pedestrian environment. And our secondary concern is that it seems the inability to locate the principal entrances on the front along semi-detached dwellings within the front facade arises from the location of the secondary dwelling unit entrances, which is not in accordance with the zoning bylaw, and also the cumulative impact of lot widths and lot area variances on this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wakula. Mr. Kalitsa, could you respond to those concerns raised?
Well, the way we had this organized, Mr. Chair, was that I was going to give the general overview of the application, and Mr. Bruni was going to address the specific concerns that are raised by staff. So maybe I will turn that over to Mr. Bruni, but just before I do that, Mr. Chair, I would like to say that we began this design process in September. We met with staff early in November, and we knew that we needed these variances, and we thought that they were that they resulted in a better development, and we proceeded on the basis that initially staff did agree that this proposal maintained the intent of all the policies and the streetscape character analysis. So I think that's really important to say that we knew what we were doing. On the adjournment, we looked at other options of dealing with the front face of that building. We spent 2 weeks on that, and we're convinced that what we're asking for will result in a better streetscape. So if Anthony just wants to pick up on that and show you some examples, that would be good.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Nguyen, would you be able to skip directly to my images that I sent? Keep going. Keep going. I think we'll probably come back to these with Jim, but keep going. And it's right there. Thank you. Oh, right there. Yeah. Okay, so staff's primary concern is just to quote, the proposed facade design, which deviates from the principal entrance dominant character group and deviates from the intention of the zoning bylaw provisions for maintaining streetscape character. The streetscape character analysis requirement for principal dwellings to face the street encourages continuity with neighboring dwellings on Carruthers Avenue and supports an active pedestrian environment. What we're showing here just in these images, the top two are comparables to some other semis that have been completed recently in the neighborhood, some long semis. And these meet the SCA for principal dwelling units for the front entry doors located on the street. And you can see here that, using the words of the city, that they, do not encourage continuity. I mean, the door location in and itself does not necessarily encourage continuity and does not animate the street, and does not support an active pedestrian environment. There's a lack of porches, there's a lack of animation, but it meets the SCA in a prescriptive manner, and it achieves that. On the left is what we're proposing from a similar angle, and you can see the entrances that, although they don't face the front elevation, they do, however, you can see the door is located close to the front corner. The landings and the stairs for those principal entry doors are located and oriented towards the street, which meets the intent of the SCA. And we also have gone to great lengths to animate these entrances with planting screens, landscaping elements, projected bays, and canopies that wrap around to the principal entrance. All these things to pick up on the porches and canopies and balconies and bays of the adjacent neighboring dwelling units. We've also, you can see how we've stepped back the third story to, again, and I believe that's far more successful than the location of the front door in terms of encouraging continuity with the neighboring dwelling units. So our first point on this is that we have had in the past experience with the city where we have located the doors similar to this in the, on the front corner, not necessarily facing the front, but the intent of the bylaw has always been, as we understood, to encourage that animation, and it's meeting that intent and not really the prescriptive requirement. And we have had city support, and I think Mr. Kaliza will touch on that in his presentation, but we have had city support on this on many occasions. This is not a new thing for us to do. And again, I think if you're comparing something that meets the prescriptive idea of the SCA, and on the left, the one that doesn't, I believe the one on the left, and this is where our professional opinions differ, that the one on the left is a much achieves in a much stronger way all the things the official plan, the city speaks about of the intent of the SCA, that it actually achieves it in this manner more so than the prescriptive manner. The lower two images are a comparison again of one that prescriptively conforms on the right, which is you have your principal entrance door facing the street, and then you have your secondary dwelling unit door not facing the street, and that would be the one just facing or next to the address numbers there. So you have one in the front, one on the side. But again, it's tough to say how this really encourages continuity or animates the street in any way. The image on the left is an example of locating the secondary dwelling unit in a manner of having it accessed through a front sunken garden, similarly to what we're proposing in our development, which allows for a greater a more livable unit for the secondary dwelling unit. As you know, in most of these cases, the secondary dwelling units are basement apartments and usually have simply basement windows. In this case, through the sunken garden and sunken entry, you're allowed to have full height glazing and more natural light, private amenity space for the secondary dwelling unit, which is not a requirement. It is just a desire for us to try and achieve to improve the livability of that unit. I think we can, so you can just see how the comparison of these two entries, how the feeling of one and that welcoming entry versus the one on the right. And we can skip to the next slide. And then, you know, that same secondary dwelling unit, you can see this is an interior image of it, you know, facing the garden with the full height glass. Not your typical secondary dwelling unit. However, it is much more livable. It's filled with light, and it actually has a relationship to the street along with the principal dwelling unit. On the right, you see, you know, again, these meet the prescriptive requirements, and you know, the windows are, you know, are not space, or do not have an intermediary space between them. There's no porch, there's no canopies, and these are not definitely as livable units as we are trying to achieve. And on the lower two, looking at the space between the units, our proposal, we've developed a landscape entry court with a trellis. Again, the planting screens, canopies, stairs and landings that are oriented to the street. The entry court really addresses the street and almost becomes like the front porch of the project. And that's, you know, versus the prescriptive method, which, you know, results, you know, in often an alley between the two buildings, and you know, and results in a space, and that space does interact with the street. And in the one case, it's, you know, it's not a very desirable space, where in our case, where we put a lot of emphasis on the design of that space. And part of that, making that entry court, that landscape entry court work successfully, is having those principal entry doors into the court. And I think that's important. Skip to the next page. So this image on the upper left, so this is to address the secondary concern. The secondary concern notes that their concern arises from the inability to locate the principal entrances of the front long semi-detached dwellings with the front facade due to the cumulative impact of the requested variances. The proposed minimum lot width, minimum lot area, and location of the secondary dwelling unit entrance limit the available space within the front wall of the dwellings to appropriately accommodate the required principal entrances. In this case, I think it's important to note that the location of the front door is completely unrelated to the lot width or lot area requirements. There are at least a dozen examples on, you know, within a block and a half or so of this development of long semis. Some of them I showed you images of that are on lots with reduced lot widths and lot areas. And it's very clear that it has nothing to do with the ability to put the front door on the front. The upper image is of one we did with the same developer a few doors down, which was a successful project. And you can see that we have a front door, we have plenty of glazing for the living space next to it. The secondary dwelling unit is in the basement in the traditional manner, and it has basement windows on the sides. And, it's not filled with light, but it's a secondary dwelling unit. And what we're simply looking at doing here, again, we are not stuck doing this because we're reducing the lot width or because we've located the secondary dwelling unit in the basement. The request for this variance really is simply to achieve what you see in the right-hand corner, which is the sunken gardens for the secondary dwelling unit. The front doors, which are located close to the front corner, but are not actually facing the front. We have these canopies that wrap around, and again, it was to achieve this sort of entry court and create these more livable units and improve on what we've already developed before. That's the reason for it. And again, I don't think we can tie the front door location to the reason that there's this cumulative impact of the lot width and lot areas. It's not there, and that has no basis in fact. So, I mean, the point of these images is to demonstrate that although we don't meet the prescriptive, for the first concern, we don't meet the prescriptive requirement of the doors, but we do achieve exactly what the SCA is trying to achieve. We're just not doing it in the prescriptive manner that planning is suggesting. I think it's also important to note that we have had planning support for this type of variance on other occasions. They have supported it, understanding that the intent is really what they're looking for here. And in this case, I believe we achieve it. And secondly, that for the second concern, that there is no way that this variance is a result of the lot width or lot area variance that we are requesting.
Thank you, Mr. Bruni. We have thoroughly gone through all of the documentation, including the presentation, but we do have some questions, and I believe Ms. McLean will lead off with them, and then we'll hear from the Community Association. So Ms. McLean, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think, Mr. Bruni, you may have touched on an answer to the question that I had, but basically is what prevents you from designing along semi-detached with a front door? And I think I'm hearing that it's because you want to introduce a secondary dwelling unit, it prevents you from adding the front door for the unit. And my next question is, where is that front door for the main unit at the front?
I guess this is where the problem in the presentation, because Mr. Kalitsa through his presentation was going to take you through all the various design elements, but so the basically introducing a secondary dwelling unit is not the reason for the variance. I think if we can go back to that image, that last image that we were showing. And I'm not sure if it might be helpful if I don't know if Mr. Kalitsa can briefly go through the ins and out of the project so that you do understand the nuances of it. So it is not, because there are other images that will show Ms. McLean or through the chair, Ms. McLean, the question that you're asking would be shown with Mr. Kalitsa's presentation. The introduction of a secondary dwelling unit, there is a secondary dwelling unit in the upper image in that project. The entry is to the side instead of the front. What we've done is flip that. So we have the entry to the secondary dwelling unit through a sunken garden at the front. And if the image below, you can see that it's similar to that other image that we've shown. If you go to the slide above or the slide before this one, please. Sorry, and up one more, or back one more. The bottom left image is similar to that. The secondary dwelling unit is at the lower level and it's entered through a sunken porch or garden, which is what we're doing on ours. So the door is located close to the front, but on the corner. And the secondary dwelling unit is located at the front through a sunken garden, which has also the amenity space for the secondary dwelling unit. I think I would suggest that maybe we should let Mr. Kalitsa, before we go on, to just briefly go through the overview of the project so that it's clearly understood what we're doing here.
We'll take that suggestion under advisement. Ms. McLean, do you have any other questions? You're muted, Ms. McLean.
Sorry, could you show me where the front door to the main unit is in that alleyway or in that? It's not.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I think if we go through, maybe go back to the first slide that we looked at. Keep going. Actually, you can stop at there. Yeah, I know my cursor won't show up, but it's at the between the two buildings. You can see there's the door below the canopy, just on the side there, close to the front. If you zoom in on it, there's a canopy that wraps the corner, and then there's the door there. So it's close to the front. It's about probably a meter or so from the front corner of the building on the side of the interior landscape courtyard.
Okay, yes, I can see it now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. McLean, anything else?
No, that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Wilder.
Thank you. I noticed, Mr. Bruni, it's interesting, the examples you're giving, your 143 Bayswater, your 185 Hinchy, you're showing us your projects essentially.
No, none of these are our projects.
Okay, none of these are your projects. I see. Okay. So looking at these other ones, looking at your project, then, you mentioned light in terms of natural light. Certainly, I'm looking at your design. I'm looking at the one on Bayview Avenue, and in terms of the natural sunlight, I appreciate there's going to be a sunken garden and the like. But I guess I'm looking at some of the concerns that have been raised with regards to, well, and first of all, the whole question of the secondary dwelling unit. It was quite clear when the zoning amendments were made with regards to the provision and allowing secondary dwelling units that, notwithstanding design, it was quite clear that we wanted to limit the number of entrances, no matter how they're concealed from the front of the dwelling. It was to be at the side or the rear. And that, obviously that's not what you're doing in this case. There's some concealment, but still the entrances are not where it was intended. And I'm also concerned, I guess I go back to the whole question of the amount of sunlight that will be provided to these secondary dwelling units. I guess that's a concern here too. I mean, we're really packing in a lot on this site, to be honest with you. I mean, overall, in terms of what's being removed, in terms of trees, in terms of what limited landscaping you're providing overall, I guess, well, maybe you can answer those concerns. Landscaping, limited light for the secondary dwelling units, the absolute need to have the entrances, especially for the secondary dwelling unit where it's located. Those are my questions.
Okay, well, through the chair, again, if Mr. Klitza had the opportunity to do he would have addressed all these. But so on the upper right image, again, these are not our projects. These are projects that have been approved through the committee. They required only lot width and lot area for these long semis with secondary dwelling units. There are multiple examples of these through the neighborhood, and you can see. Just looking at the upper right image, you can see there's one door on the left, around the corner, right? That's on the side. I don't know if you can see that on the upper right image. There's a door on the side of the middle building, and then a door on the front, right? So this conforms to the zoning bylaw, right? So we have a door. One of those is the door to the secondary dwelling unit, and one of them is the door to the principal dwelling unit. In this case, the one on the side happens to be the secondary dwelling unit, the one on the front. However, so it's the same number of doors and it's the same number of entrances, and they're primarily located close to the street. I think what the city is trying to do is actually encourage entryways to the street and close to the street, and to have that. what we're suggesting here is that, you know, it's a similar idea. However, it's the secondary dwelling unit, which has the sunken garden, and their door happens to face the street. The primary residence is around the corner, but what we've done is we've wrapped the glass around the corner, we've wrapped canopies around the corner, we have that landscaped courtyard as a design element to encourage an animated streetscape. And again, the point of this is not in any way to get more units or to get a secondary dwelling unit. The variance for the front door has nothing to do with that. You know, we have support of the neighbors, we have sort of support of the community association with this design. And really it was just a desire to do something innovative and to do something a little different, and something that we feel really would be something unique on the site and really animates the street. And it's something that the developer was hoping to achieve in terms of doing a really strong project for the community. Like I said, this gains no more units, no more size of units. You know, we meet all the setbacks. The lot width and lot area variances have been done multiple occasions throughout the neighborhood. In Mr. Cleats' presentation, and maybe maybe we can move up a few slides or move back a few slides, just to show you as an example. There is a map. Okay, go to the next slide. Next one. Next. So the map at the bottom left there, the pink shows all these long semis with secondary dwelling units, and they are desired by the community more than apartment buildings. These units are 3 bedrooms. They're 3-bedroom rental units for families. They're a much needed unit type in the community. It's the same density we would get with an as of right apartment, actually less dense. And it's something that the community prefers over an apartment building format on these residential streets. These long semis integrate a little better into the street than the apartment buildings do. In terms of the light, that image of the interior of the secondary dwelling unit was for that Bayswater project, and that project has the same orientation that this unit has, and you can see how by having that full height of glass at the front really does fill the unit with light. So getting light is definitely all these units are permitted secondary dwelling units. Typically, the secondary dwelling unit just has basement windows. What we're trying to do is just simply improve on that design and have a more livable unit and a secondary dwelling unit that is actually more related to the street and to the neighborhood, and the people living in there feel more a part of the street and the neighborhood. It really has nothing to do with more units, more density, anything like that. It's really, we're looking to move the door simply to create this more animated design at the front. That's really what it's about. The city, we were surprised that we had developed this project quite a bit when we first, based on the fact that the city did support the fact that we met the intent of the SCA. And we developed design and made application based on that. I mean, I believe if you would have read the original submission we had for the planning rationale, we had noted that we had city support. It wasn't until shortly before the hearing that we found out that it had changed planners' hands, and we had unfortunately been told that they no longer supported that they were sticking to the more prescriptive approach and requiring the front door to face the street. We do have a design that achieves that. And however, we did, compare that design, like what we had done before, compared to this. And we just felt this is actually a much stronger project and actually contributes to the street and the neighborhood more. And that's really the reason we're here. I mean, I think the developers has a great relationship in this community. They've done other very successful developments. And I believe that this is, this is the reason for that one variance for the front door to just locate to the side to do something better. I think Mr. Kalitsa has his hand up.
Mr. Kalitsa?
All I would like to ask the committee, if you put that, Anthony, first slide up where you're comparing streetscapes, which streetscape feels better? I mean, really. And that was our intent, because what we've noticed, and we both live in this neighborhood within a block from this site. So what we've noticed, and we've done 3 or 4 long semi projects now, is we've learned a few things. So one is the space between the buildings has become larger over time because of servicing requirements. And what we recognize is that we should really begin to address that space and make it a good, nice space for the inhabitants and for it to contribute to the streetscape. So that was one motivation, is to make that space part of the street. So that's why the screens and all the planting goes into that space. We also were learning, visiting these secondary dwelling units, and it's not like we're trying to slide secondary dwelling units in here. We've done projects, and there's 11 examples in the neighborhood, including these, where there's secondary dwelling units. We're not trying to increase density, we're trying to make a better project. And what we recognize visiting the secondary dwelling units is that they're almost second-class citizens. Yeah, they're spaces, but can we make those spaces better than they are, more livable? They're a right in all neighborhoods. So we came up with this innovative idea. We knew we were going to get flack, but we had experience on other projects that went to OLT, etc. And staff, and it's in my report, in my presentation here, and staff at that time had recognized that there are other alternatives to putting the front door on the front of the building, or the principal unit door on the front facade. You can't put it around to the side. There's language in the design guidelines that speak about that, and I can, if you want me to get into it, I can. So the question I have to ask the committee, if you were walking down the street and you were living in this neighborhood, which street would you rather walk down? For me, it seems obvious. I'd rather walk down what we're proposing than what's being built. So if there are questions, I can answer them, Mr. Chair. If you want me to go through the presentation and address these points a bit more, I can do that. But we just think we're creating something that is going to enhance the neighborhood, our neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Kalitsa. I'm going to ask Mr. Marlowe from the Community Association, and I'll allow you to close off, Mr. Kalitsa. Mr. Marlowe, or Miss Marlowe, I'm not sure.
Yes. Hello, Chair and committee.
Name and address, please.
Lori Marlowe, 215 Parkdale Avenue.
Okay. You've heard some of the discussion today and you're aware of the file. Could you give us your feedback?
Yes. So I am the president of Mechanicsville Community Association, and The applicant and architects met with us December 14th, 2021, before they even filed the application, and we appreciate that kind of consultation right at the beginning. They walked us through the plan and the elevations. We had no concerns with the variances, and we had no concerns with the entry doors off that inner courtyard. Actually, we found that it gave a little more variety in the street because we're starting to get the same build over and over and over and over with the doors on the front. This one gave a more animated, more interesting entryway to it, which we appreciated. It also, we're supportive of the secondary units, and we are very supportive of the fact that there would be more light in there and an amenity space on the front. We appreciate that. You get a better tenant in those secondary units when they're more attractive. And I also walked around the neighborhood and Hintonburg, and there's several other similar designs with the doors off the inner courtyard. And when you're walking by them, they're very easy to spot. You're naturally brought in and can see where those doors are. So we have no concerns. And I just want to say the applicant has built several homes in the neighborhood. He's been they've been very good developer. They've clean, tidy, and very respectful of the neighborhood. So we've been pleased with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilder.
Thank you. Can we hear from Ms. Young with regards to the matter of the trees, what we're losing, what's being replaced, and I guess the whole question of green space, what's being provided here? Thank you.
Yes, that I was going to take you there as well. Ms. Young, some feedback from you, and then Mr. Kalitsa can respond as well.
Thank you for the question. This plan proposes to remove both of the existing trees because they are in poor condition. Well, one is in poor condition and one is directly within the footprint of the building. So we really have no concerns with the removal of those trees. They would be very difficult to avoid either one of them. We did have some back and forth about the ability to plant. Originally, there were only 2 new trees proposed to be planted in the front. And granted, they do have very limited space between the sunken patio thing and the side property line is very limited, but really they are limited to planting small trees there anyway due to other constraints. So now they are proposing those trees as well as 2 trees in the rear yards. So it's not a lot. There aren't going to be large trees here, but it's kind of the best that can be expected for this area.
Thank you, Ms. Young. The image of the front shows a fairly tall tree. It's, I guess what I'm hearing from you is it's likely not going to be that tall.
No.
But you're confident that something will survive there if selected properly and whatnot?
A small tree should do okay. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Just before I turn it back to Mr. Kalitsa to close off, is there any other comments or questions from committee? Okay, Mr. Kalitsa, you can wrap up. You can take a few minutes to close any loops that you feel weren't addressed.
I just want to say that this was adjourned and this will partially answer the landscape question. Adjourned to address 4 concerns that planning had. We addressed 3 of them. There was a concern about engineering. We resolved that quickly in 2 weeks and got staff approval. There's a question with regards to forestry, and we heard that we've satisfied them. And now planning had a concern that we didn't meet the bylaw requirement for the soft landscaping of the front yard. We actually exceed that. I want to note that every unit there, including the secondary dwelling units, has an outdoor amenity space, which is not usually found in infill projects. The outstanding one is the location of the door. And I think the committee really has to look at the intent of what that is. Is it actually having that door on the front, or is it what the entry actually does to engage the project with the street? And I would have to say that what we're proposing does do that. And I would just wrap up and not get into it too much, is that we do meet the 4 tests that are outlined in the official plan. And of course, you note that we have, I think it's 9 letters of support on file. So I thank you for your time. If there are any questions, we'd be more than glad to answer them for you.
Just 2 points, Mr. Klitsa. There's one comment where there's a concern about runoff. I will just say that will be part of the grading and drainage plan that gets through the city's process, and it will be up to city staff to work with you to ensure that that's addressed. And Ms. Marlowe's comments earlier were supportive, and she did have a few comments in her written comments about avoiding ventilation fans.
Yes.
Have you looked at that?
We've looked at all of them, and we've addressed them all.
All of them. So the glass, bird safe design, all that stuff.
So you got you've got the 4 of them, the glass. I've got the mark down here somewhere. Snow storage, ventilation fans, glass, and soft landscaping.
Okay, thank you. All right. So there are 8 conditions: cash in lieu, tree planting, existing dwelling debris removed, accessory structure debris removed, servicing plan, JUMA, grading and drainage plan, and asphalt overlay. You're aware of those conditions, Mr. Klitsa?
Yes, we are, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Just before we wrap up, members of the committee, any other follow-up final questions? Okay, we're going to reserve on this, Mr. Klitsa. You'll have our decision within 10 days. Thank you for your presentation and your discussion and answering our questions.
Thank you.
And I believe that is it for today's hearing. So thank you all for attending.
Mr. Chair, we still have item 4 to.
Oh my goodness, yes, there was a person who wasn't available earlier. Yes.
Yes, and further to that, we received an update from that individual. They were no longer able to attend due to the hour. They have submitted a very brief comment, which if the committee would prefer, I could quickly read into the record.
Yes, please do. That was item 4, 102 McLaren, and this was Miss Cooper from 103 Gilmore Street. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please do.
So the pertinent section for Ms. Cooper, she says, I'm not opposed per se. I just wanted to understand what's planned a bit better, including any greenery, which doesn't seem possible with the removal of the only tree back there. So, not opposed.
That is it? Okay.
That's it.
Members of the committee, are we comfortable voting on this one now? Any concerns? Okay, on approval?
No, I'm sorry. I was waiting, trying to get my mute off. If we could reserve one.
You wish to reserve?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we will reserve. Thank you. Thank you for attending.